We are right now 132 days away from the first midterms of Donald Trump's second term. We're following results in these key primary races across 4 states, not just one, that are going to shape the state of the opposition party, the Democrats, in their first nationwide challenge to President Trump's power in November. The results of tonight's elections in Maryland, in South Carolina, in Utah, and especially in New York are going to have tremendous implications for what happens in November and beyond. It's not just about whether Democrats have the ability to snatch back control of one or both chambers of Congress. It's a referendum on the first 2 years of the president's term, a first chance for real accountability. If you want to know how high the stakes are, just ask Donald Trump. This is what he told Republicans it would mean for him if Republicans lose control of Capitol Hill.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, I mean, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
I'll get impeached. In the 18 months since Donald Trump took the reins of the federal government, he's taken this country for a ride it didn't sign up for. He's launched a war that he said he would not launch. His policies have raised the cost of living instead of lowering it, and he's weaponized a justice system that he claims was weaponized against him. As Trump fully admitted in that clip you just heard, he fears accountability. And that is precisely what this year's elections are all about, an opportunity for the American people to reclaim some amount of power to restrain Donald Trump's anti-democratic ambitions. Every single primary race between now and November will give us a better sense of how that's going to play out, which brings us back to New York. The state of New York has 26 districts, almost none of which will change hands in November, except perhaps for one. New York's 17th congressional district, which offers Democrats one of their best chances of flipping a Republican seat to Democratic this year. It's currently held by the Republican Mike Lawler. But there's another intriguing dynamic unfolding in the state that's worth keeping an eye on, because it will shape the future of the Democratic Party and how it'll function as an opposition party during the second half of Donald Trump's term. And that fight is happening in the heart of New York City in 3 safe Democratic districts, where the city's mayor, Zohran Mamdani, has tested his influence in federal elections for the first time just 6 months into his tenure. His chosen slate of congressional candidates is small, but they have the opportunity of shaking up the Democratic Party in a big way. Brad Lander's decisive win over Dan Goldman in New York 10 tonight makes Goldman the first Democratic incumbent to be ousted so far this election cycle by a true outside primary challenger. The only other 2 Dems who've lost in primaries were driven out by Republican gerrymandering in Texas, in which they ran against one another or one against a former incumbent. Moments ago, Goldman delivered his concession speech and offered this reminder.
Let's remember, the enemy to all that we want and all that we hope for is in the White House, not in our own party.
Less than an hour ago, Adriano Espaillat, the dean of the New York Latino Politics and the head of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, became the second Democratic incumbent to go down to defeat at the hands of an outside challenger. He lost his race to Daria Liza Avila Chevalier, also backed by Mamdani. Meanwhile, Claire Valdez's victory in New York's 7th congressional district gave Mamdani 3 victories out of 3 and solidified his influence in this moment in time on New York City politics. Again, none of these districts will change hands. The Democrats who won in New York tonight will almost entirely become members of Congress for their districts. But who is driving Democratic politics, Democratic Party politics in November has huge implications, not just for Democrats, but for the whole country. Because the struggles for control of Congress is not just Republican versus Democrat. It's also about progressives versus moderates, outsiders versus the establishment, and crucially, who can actually win in November. And that's what tonight's elections are going to help us unravel. So let's get to it. Joining me for the hour to unpack tonight's results, Puck contributor Abby Livingston, former New York Congressman Max Rose. He represented New York's 11th district, covering all of Staten Island and parts of southern Brooklyn. Former New York Congressman Mondaire Jones. He represented New York's previous 17th district, which saw significant changes after redistricting in 2022. And Charlotte Alter, journalist, author of the New Humanism Project on Substack. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here on such an important night. And Congressman, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to ask you first, because there are a lot of people who don't live in New York
and
may not care about what happened here, especially since virtually none of these districts will change hands. Only one in the entire state is likely to change hands. Why is this important this night?
Look, the most important outcome tonight was the Democratic primary in my old district, the 17th Congressional District. Obviously, it's very different now post 2 cycles of redistricting in the past 4 years than it was at the time I represented it. Otherwise, I'd still be in Congress right now. There was a Republican in that district. And
that's Mike Lawler.
That's Mike Lawler.
And he's what you might think of these days as a moderate Republican.
He is someone, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, that a lot of folks in the press sort of give credit to as being a moderate, despite his voting record being lockstep with Donald Trump. He has succeeded in a way few others have at convincing people of the lie that he is somehow independent of Donald Trump. But what we saw tonight in the statement that he issued after the primary election result is a challenge of Kate Conley, now the Democratic nominee, to 6 different debates following the July 4th holiday. That is not the posture of someone who is feeling confident about his prospects in the general election. He's clearly got polling showing that he is vulnerable to defeat against Kate Conley.
And we've seen that. Max Rose, we don't describe your old district as being in play. But you did represent it not that long ago. Talk to me about what this night means to you. I suspect you might be a little worried about the direction the Democratic Party took in New York tonight.
Well, I mean, first of all, I know what Kate Conley is going through right now. I remember winning my primary in 2018 and thinking, shows like this would talk about me, and then AOC wins her primary that night too, and I'm like, no one ever heard about Max Rose that night.
You're welcome.
So we have to make sure we're talking about Kate Connolly,
because she might be the only flip
ahead, because it's the Kate Connollys that are a pathway to Hakeem Jeffries becoming Speaker, and we should not forget that. And Kate will not be inviting one of the 3 Mamdani-endorsed individuals who won their primary. She will not be inviting one of them to campaign with her in her swing district. So we should always remember those dynamics. But with that being said, though, let's also highlight those individuals who lost their races today. No one can claim that Antonio Reynoso, Adriano Espaillat, or Dan Goldman were not leading progressives. These were not moderates by any sense of the word here. So this is something very different that's happening in the Democratic Party that's far more, I don't know if it's associated with vibes. I don't know if it's associated with Israel, but someone drew a line in the sand. DSA drew a line in the sand in these races and said, you're not with us. And that's really what caused this.
So you are worried a little bit.
I wouldn't say that I'm worried about the general elections because we're continuing to nominate people in swing districts that can and will win. That's really all I care about.
So, Abby, Max says that that Kate Conley will help Hakeem Jeffries become Speaker. I'm not sure, but I think all 3 of the Mamdani-endorsed candidates tonight have said that's actually on the table, whether Mamdani or Schumer. Some have said they will not support either of them. Obviously, there are no Senate candidates tonight. How's this playing in Washington?
I think the most important thing to think about is that winning the House might be the easier step for Leader Jeffries. And so most party leaders build their support based on their state delegations. And to have some folks in his district or in his city who he didn't support means they don't have personal loyalty to him. So whether it's the Speaker's vote or future votes, it's going to be hard for him to count votes with the margin. And the reason is because of this Republican redistricting. This should be a very big year for Democrats, but this redistricting has shrunk it. So Hakeem Jeffries may have the same kinds of problems that Speaker Mike Johnson has had in getting his rebels in line on the big votes.
And later on, we're going to talk about what it will take for Democrats to win back the House. Charlotte Alter, Dan Goldman made a point in his remarks, and he said the enemy is not within. I happen to take the view that debates like these are healthy for a political party if you'd like to actually function as a political party in a Big Ten. Some take a view that this is damaging to Democrats at a time that they have to win back the House.
Listen, I think that you can't separate what happened tonight from what's been happening in New York City for the last 6 months, which is a kind of Mamdani honeymoon, a Mamdani moon. People in this city love Zohran Mamdani. Look at the way people poured into the streets when the Knicks won. Look at the way the city has felt different in the last couple months since he's been mayor, at a time when the rest of the country feels like it's falling apart. So I think I agree with my co-panelists here. I know that this is going to have a huge impact on what's happening in Washington. I think it's going to, say a lot about the direction of the party. But I also want us to pause on this night and recognize that what happened tonight is related to the way that politics in New York City has changed. And that's actually a very positive story for Democrats. It's one of the most positive stories for Democrats in the country because people are really happy with how things are going in this city. Mamdani's approval rate is like near 80%. The vibes are good in a moment where almost everywhere else the vibes are really bad.
Can I make a caveat to that?
Yeah.
If we have time. So that plus people still think very poorly of the Democratic Party's brand. And you had two incumbent Democratic members of Congress who are viewed to be part of the establishment, insufficiently leading on a number of issues that matter to the specific electorates in their respective districts. And I think that did play a role when faced with dynamic, oftentimes younger challengers, not always, oftentimes younger challengers who were speaking to the moment, if you will, of this just outrage, not just at Republicans in Washington, but at Democrats who a lot of folks perceive to not be fighting sufficiently hard enough.
Hold that thought. We're going to come back in just a moment with Abby Livingston, Max Rose, Mondaire Jones, and Charlotte Alter.